Hello, brothers and sisters, for my 57th and hopefully last message. I am going to come against the 57 members of the OIC and everything else. I'm going to sit back and say, I told you so. But, unfortunately, it's not about pride or joy or anything else. It's about waking you up. It's about waking you up. I'll title this piece, The End of International Law. Now, the problem with most people is we're so delved into day-to-day we don't understand the UN and international law and norms and everything else. But what happened in the UN provisions is that disputed territories between two nations couldn't be overrun or ruled by them until they had these thousands of freaking laws. This is it's the old Nimrod system, where nations had come together in diplomacy and everybody could take part in each other's nations and everything could go well. The only problem is that nations don't operate independent of each other. We do have an interconnected basis, but the problem is our foundations are all different. And because our foundations are all different, there's a problem. In Nimrod's time, there wasn't a problem. In our time, there's a lot of problems. So, what people aren't paying attention to is that the bloc of Arab nations and the OIC are meeting, and Turkey is causing a lot of these problems, as I anticipated, and they're using international law against international law. Now, during the Barack Obama administration, during the later parts of 2016, he ended up approving a bunch of resolutions that basically called all of the lands basically beyond the 1948-1949 armistice line a Muslim nation or a Muslim title, basically granting the world in favor of Palestinian ownership of whatever territories. Now, the danger in that is that, for one, we're redefining what God's territories are. And technically, if you're redefining God's territories, you're going against Scripture. But you can go to the simple thing is everybody talks about occupied or occupier, right? They start talking about human rights versus other things. Well, the only rights that are extended to me are those endowed by my Creator, and those endowed by my Creator are determined by His rules and principles. So we can try and create a circumspect of all of that, but most of the time when I hear an occupier and then I see resistance, what ends up happening is an occupier is defending himself and a resistance is fighting. They're not peacefully doing anything. It's not like Martin Luther King. They are throwing rocks. They are throwing Molotov cocktails. These are not peaceful people. These are not people of love. These are armed and ready individuals. And as much as you try to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing by humanitarian reasons, and whatever the fuck defines humanitarian is on your own behalf, not my behalf, I just sit back and think, you guys are all retarded. You're not seeing what system you're appearing or you're pushing yourself to uphold. So while we have the liberals in America, which basically enforce the most liberal policies possible, as in Europe, what you see is that human sin is gratuitous. You have people walking around the street naked. You have people celebrating people's whatever falsification in their head. We're all celebrating lies. And I don't want to celebrate lies. I just don't think that's a good thing. I mean, there's very simply two genders. There's very simply right and wrong. And as much as you try and play in the gray area, what you'll find out is the gray area is not gray at all. And the problem is you get pushed through Hegelian dialect into thinking there's gray. Well, I don't care if this person's doing whatever, it's not my house. Well, yeah. The problem is it's not your house, but if you keep letting them do it in propagation, what ends up happening is you start accepting sin. You start accepting things that lead to failure. You start accepting other things, right? It's like the alcoholic. Give me the first drink, right? Give me the first drink, I'll be okay. And then it goes to the second, then the third. Same thing with the person who has a sexual addiction. You mean the first sex person? Second. The third. I'll eventually control myself and have kids and have a family. Doesn't happen. The problem with humanitarian law is that by enforcing a set of human civil rights, what you do is you enforce a doctrine of nothing. And a doctrine of nothing eventually gets assumed into a doctrine of destruction. And those are the principles we're living by. So, when I read about Erdogan coming in and saying, well, Hamas is not a terrorist organization. They are an occupied nation fighting for their rights. They're throwing bricks and stones and not expecting to get shot. Alright, that's what it is. Israel, they are a nation who's trying to take back the land that was taken from them. And unfortunately, they're going to fight on their own principles. But I don't fight on their principles. I don't belong to that sect. I belong to Christ. And because I belong to Christ and I belong to love, these things are just, they're superfluous to me. So I sit back and say, God did grant the land to Israel, and God will give the land back to Israel because he doesn't deny his promises. But I also recognize that in the midst of all this thing, so you can sit back and create a false Canaanites and then say that they're the victim, all the while they're throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks. And why did Trump win? You guys are clueless. And I'm looking at it from the side and saying, what you don't realize is if all the Arab nations rise up as a beast system, as their religion entails, and ecumenicalism doesn't really fit, because you can't be Islamic, and you can't be Christian, and you can't be Jewish. They don't work. And whether they're three monotheistic faiths, the reality is they're not the same. They're going to three different destinations. And take it for what it is. What you're going to see now is the collapse of international law. Because the United States pushed past the territory after Palestine pushed past their territory. And the Islamic people are going to fight hard and dirty, as will we, to the extent where Christians are gone. And then you'll probably start seeing submission into a mark of a beast, which would create a world order that's completely different than what the Illuminati and everything else tell you. Because that's what most people tell you, just focus on the Satanists. They're just going to fall into the system because they just want their money and they don't care. And that's the problem. Most people do care. So keep your eyes on the collapse of international law. I see the Arab nations coming down. I see the OIC. I even see Saudi Arabia writing pieces that they're with the OIC and they're trying to change things. And I can't do anything to change any of this stuff. This is all prescripted in Scripture. You know, God will create a delusion that'll believe a lie, right? He'll send a delusion so that all that, rejoiced in unrighteousness. Yeah. It is what it is. Paul saw it. I'm saying it. And the unfortunate thing is if we're on our day-to-day, we're not seeing it. But when the Muslim nations start hitting back, and it's not a matter of years, it's a matter of days. Because that's how it works. If I'm going to try and use all of my deception to the best of my ability, I want to hit somebody blindsided. Satan's not stupid. So if Satan's going to do the same thing that I would logically do, he is going to hit people blindsided. And he's going to do it with the country that everybody doesn't expect. And he's going to do it with wrath and force. And then once all of them band together, you'll have, I think it's roughly 80 Muslim nations with an army that's probably about 5 times bigger than us. That's not good, guys. Who is like the beast? We've all sunk the oil. We've all drunk the juice. Everything's better. We're a more civilized society. We are better than our predecessors. We're all drinking the juice. And I say we all, and I'm saying it from the mentality of a person who's trying to empathize with the general population, because most people are so ingrained in their iPads or whatever their different identities are. It's just, It's all identity politics. Who the fuck cares? It's going to make you tribalistic. Once you become tribalistic, all it comes down to, just put tribe against tribe, nation against nation. Easy to create apocalypse, right? But it's here. And needless to say, watch the collapse of international law. Watch it flip over to a UN converse as the world sits back and says, we're going to reinforce the principles on a group of people that we trust. And once you do that and you realize the U.S. is out of it and the economy flips its own way, the world becomes a different place. But needless to say, I hope you're all watching. God bless you. Erdogan, Arab League Summit, Putin, they're all trying to flip the Western democracy. And the Western democracy is dying. And it's dying because of liberalism. And it's dying because everybody thinks of self over community. And that's always been the failure. But you know what? I'm not here to show you the collapse. I'm here to jump out of the collapse. And unfortunately, if I'm stuck here, I'll be killing the collapse, which it's all three. But needless to say, God bless you. Love you.